We worked really hard in the screenwriting phase to try to make it clear what the final thing was going to feel like. We've made some kind of experimental short films and music videos in the past that were just totally screenplay unfriendly, and we knew this time we had to kind of like edit it in the script writing portion, or else the crew would be really disoriented.
Some people read it and they immediately understood what was happening, and a lot of people didn't, and that's totally fine. But it was the fact that even some people were able to get it on the paper felt like a victory in and of itself, because it is a disorienting, exhausting read. It's the kind of script you can't really sit down and read in one sitting because you're just processing so much. But
yeah, that being said, we work really hard to try to make the making of the movie fun and make it inclusive and make sure people can enjoy and know what's being asked of them. You know, one thing we haven't talked much about is we would take an entire universe and we'd shoot it in a day. So everything with Rakakuni was in one day, and we took all those scenes and made a little 5-page version of the screenplay that was just like, here's all the beats, you know, so you don't have to flip to page 105 and then flip back 10 pages to figure out the moment before.
That's pretty standard to give people sides like that, but we actually went further, and like within the script, they're almost truncated versions of these short stories, and then we actually had more fleshed out versions of the sides that weren't even in the main feature,
right.
Which is not a great idea all the time. But
yeah, it was just confusing for some folks. But
yeah.
It was like, here's the deleted scenes that we just already know we're not going to shoot.
Right.
But then, to your other point, we did work with a lot of the same people that we've worked with for years, and we fought really hard to keep the shoot in Los Angeles so that all of our good friends who are our literal neighbors could work on the movie. And it's selfish, like we have a shorthand with them, we love them, and it makes our job that much easier. And we wrote the movie knowing Larkin could shoot something this ambitious, and knowing Jason could pull off these kinds of gags and would have a lot of fun with it, and knowing our editor Paul and his process, and that we could together crack these kind of challenges.
Yeah, I almost feel bad for any of the key crew members who hadn't worked with us before, because they look at the script, they look at the breakdowns, they look at, you know, like, so Shirley, for example, is someone who had never even done a feature film before, let alone a movie with us, and the number of costumes and looks she had to break down, for a very good reason, she was having panic attacks in prep. And we actually had to have some of our crew members kind of help the other new crew members to understand our process and tell them, when they say this doesn't matter, you can trust them. It's not to say that we don't get stressed out and things don't, emotions don't get high on our sets. It's just that we do spend a little bit more time considering what's the best way to make sure everyone feels like they're comfortable, they have all their needs taken care of, so that they can, focus on the things that matter and let go of some of the other things that we know we'll figure out, and kind of just trusting the process, because we've done this so many times with so many. We've done a dozen music videos, a dozen commercials, almost a dozen short films, and then a feature. And we've gone through this process so many times that there are certain things that kind of go unspoken now, and we just understand implicitly what the game plan is going to be. And I'm excited for the next one, because now we've actually found even more friends that we're going to bring on to the next film, and I don't know what we're capable of, but it's going to be very exciting to see.
Came from music videos, short films, commercials, doing a lot of this. And so we get to cut our teeth in a lower stakes way, where you get to shoot for 3 days, 5 days here, and you get to meet a lot of people. So that's how I met Shirley. And as soon as I met Shirley, I was like, I know that she has to work with these guys. And we just, even though this was our core hub of our creative team, I'd have to branch out and do other things just to make a living. And so it was kind of like building this whole little army around our core team. And then it's really hard once you bring all these disparate people in to really curate that many adults into this sort of version of play that we like to do. And it's kind of embarrassing at first. We're like, here we go, first day, we're gonna just do something really silly. But it's so funny how as soon as we show up on set, the first thing we do is a warm up. So even on our scout, we had stickers on our chest that said our name and our favorite ice cream. We played a dumb game, and it just instantly takes the whole pressure cooker and just takes out all the pressure. And I think that from there, and it's not something I can take credit for, because if they were really high strung, there's nothing I could do. But because all three of us, we've done this for so long together, we know how we like to work with our crew. We always want to start with play and creativity, because it's going to be hard. And so then, whether it's guided meditation in the morning when it's like really kind of like a hard week, or it's just being super silly and making like a slow motion fight sequence, or
it's a lot of like theater exercises. Honestly, if you're a theater kid, then you know what it is. Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of times you show up on set and you have so many preconceived notions, so much baggage of what it's like to work on a film set, that as soon as you do something really stupid, you're suddenly very embodied. You're aware of yourself, you're aware of the other people around you, and then hopefully you can shake it out of your system, and then you just start the day, and it's just everyone starts at zero. And then throughout the day, then when you show up, and the directors and myself, we're all very casual, then you don't feel like you have to be covering your ass. I love a phrase that my grandfather would say, is that you can't get any work done if you're using both of your hands to cover your ass. So it's like, what we try to do is just be like, it's all fun. Let's just all work hard and have some fun here.
Watching The Matrix for the first time in middle school, I remember being so shocked by the violence and so shocked by the horror of watching the whole team die, and I was not ready for it. And like, I think oftentimes when you are traumatized by something as a kid, you have to revisit it and figure out what it all means. And so I rewatched the VHS of The Matrix, like, I don't even know how many times that year. And then I didn't watch it again until maybe 2013, 2014. Quentin Tarantino's theater at the New Beverly was having a 90s month, and they were doing a double feature of The Matrix and Fight Club. And so I was like, hell yes, I'm gonna go see this. And I remember just leaving that night and being like, oh my God, the movies from the 90s were so just audacious and fun, not only in the narrative, but also in the form. And I remember being so inspired and being like, Scheinert, I want to make something that is half as good as The Matrix. If we can make something like that, I'd be like happy with the rest of my career. And so that kind of kick-started at least the initial seed of trying to create a fun action movie with like kung fu choreography, some sort of sci-fi premise.
And we'd been talking about like the multiverse and action scene ideas and action movie ideas for years. And so that became like our new kind of like experiment, was like, oh, what's the like slightly perverted surreal version of The Matrix, because that's more our wheelhouse. Right. And we came up with verse jumping, and then returned to it many times while writing, because there's something structurally, like he said, so impressive about The Matrix, just the way it gets you to care about these characters, even the side ones that you barely know. Mm-hmm. You find yourself just caring so deeply about everyone on the squad by the end of the movie, and things like that. We were just like, there's so much to learn from what the Wachowskis did.
Yeah, and so we kind of took The Matrix, and then we paired it up with some of our other sci-fi influences like Vonnegut and Douglas Adams, and try to say, okay, can we mix this all into a stew that we love? And once we landed on the fact that we wanted to make a movie about the multiverse that was infinite and far-reaching, and in some ways so overwhelming that it destroys the narrative of the film, we realized that genre was going to be something we leaned on a lot to help the audience have a shorthand with us, to be like, oh, when we're in this genre, that means we're in this universe. We don't have to put up a little card every single time to orient you. And in fact, if you get disoriented, that's fine. That's also part of the intention.
If we would just lean on things we loved and be like, oh, I've watched that 100 times already. Let's play in that world. Right. That'll be really familiar for the audience, hopefully. Yeah. Obviously, Wong Kar-wai universe was like such a familiar thing to kind of tap into.
Originally, it was just going to be like a romance, like just whatever. We just wanted to make a romantic whatever, and that felt kind of boring to make like a take on a rom-com or a take on like a historic romance or whatever. And then once we realized, oh, this is actually really interesting. You know, so much of Wong Kar-wai's movies are about longing, right? Longing and what could have been. And like, oh, this is perfect. Let's just lean into it. And also maybe we'll learn something by studying his work anyway. So it's also just an educational purpose for us.
And Larkin brought a lot to that too, right? So he kind of set the tone for a lot of these looks and pushed it in certain ways. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that Larkin does is like, they would want to make an idea that's really dumb, like let's just go really dumb with this, and then he would then go to the other spectrum and go, okay, go as dumb as you want, but we're going to go hyper serious with the cinematography.
With the
That's a good point.
of
Yeah.
it, yeah.
Lark and we left it open what kind of genres we would necessarily be referencing in a lot of cases. And Larkin did have strong opinions about like trying to make every universe cinematic and gorgeous, even if it's a funny one. And so like he really pushed to make the Rakakuni and the Hot Dog universes not just comedy, you know, and it really paid off because people ended up having emotional reactions to those universes.
And the one thing we didn't do is film The Rocks in true IMAX. That was the one thing he wanted to do because we did a bunch of formats and scales and a bunch of different lenses. And
the Rock universe was supposed to feel like one of those like you go to the science museum and they have a special Omni theater, like one of those dome theaters with the 3D glasses, and you get to watch a documentary about something. So that was supposed to be like a Nat Geo documentary. I think the last thing that's like a huge influence on our work was just a lot of anime films. A lot of the, like, especially the wilder stuff that they make over there is so fun and so interesting, and the creativity that's coming out of Japan animation has always been really inspiring to us. And so to be able to put that into a live action film, I think a lot of audiences who aren't familiar with that kind of work, like Satoshi Kon's work, obviously everyone knows Miyazaki, but like I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we're borrowing from, at least in spirit, in this film that people have responded to because they haven't witnessed it, at least not in live action before. When you work on a small project like this, or a relatively small project, you kind of focus on the necessities, and obviously it's just the score. That's all we were working on at first. It was just Sunlux and us trying to make sure that the movie was working. And that was an incredible experience because as a band, they've never scored something together. Ryan has scored stuff by himself, but as a band, they've never done it. And so we love bringing in people who actually don't come from film into our process because there is this beautiful naivety to it where if you don't know better, then you're going to try something that maybe someone else wouldn't try. There's like a beginner's luck to it. And so they were surprising us. We were pushing them. We found the movie through the music. But then when we showed A24 the first cut, they were pretty excited about it, and they felt like there's an opportunity here to really expand the I guess the multiverse of musicians that we could pull into the film. And so that's when we started putting together a list of just interesting musicians. And the fun thing about our film is because it can contain so many genres, we knew we could also do that with the music. And so like David Byrne, you know, is like, not only is he an icon, but I also feel like he's like iconoclastic. He's always just breaking barriers and changing the way things are supposed to be done and playing with norms. A perfect opportunity to collaborate with him. And
he watched a rough cut and was like immediately psyched about the themes and just kind of like talking about quantum physics and like the stuff he'd been reading lately, and we were just so, it was like a jolt of kind of creative energy while we were still in the rough cut phase.
Yeah.
And same with Mitski, she really responded to the rough cut.
Mitski was, you know, I'm a fan. You know, I've enjoyed all her albums, but that year I had been listening to her music a lot, and I was like, I love her voice. Let's pull her in and see if she would be interested in contributing, and that's been amazing.
And I think that, ironically, all three of us have our connection to music in different ways. But I was a musician before I was a film producer, and the way I understand filmmaking is through music, and I think, oddly enough, same with them, especially because we came through music videos. And it's just very cool because if I could list the three artists that I've been individually most inspired by over the last few years, it would include those Moses Sumney, Mitski, and David Byrne. David Byrne definitely has spanned many generations of inspiration. So it's really cool to be able to put those three people in that we all have our own connection to, and then to have them score that song in that way. And the other thing I want to say is that Michelle and Key and everyone, whenever we've shown up to a Q&A, and we always show up backstage, and there's always a little overlap between the credits and when we have to go out. Whenever This Is a Life is playing, almost always Michelle will get teary-eyed, Key will get teary-eyed, we'll all get teary-eyed, and then we have to like compose ourselves before we go out on stage. So it's a powerful song that those people put together.
Yeah.
Lastly, just a shout out to Randy Newman for...
Stole my comment. I was gonna say, if I was gonna pick three people that like are musicians, like really impacted me, three of mine are Randy Newman, Andre 3000, and Moses Sumney. And yeah, so like the band's manager was like, Andre's really looking to like do more flute stuff. Do y'all need any flutes? And we were like, yeah, we need Andre. That's what you're asking.
We need flutes now.
Yeah, but now we need
exactly.
flutes.
Yeah.
But we got to like go visit the studio and track a bunch of like flute improvisations, and he watched the movie, and we just kind of like play along to fight scenes and stuff. And that like I like was obsessed with him for a good chunk of my childhood. And I was like, that was the most starstruck I was for the entire film shoot.
But I do think this film has a certain gravity to it that can actually contain all these things, and so we were really lucky that we built this premise that can hold, it's a container that can hold all these things, a vessel that can actually hold all these things, and it still makes sense somehow. It still holds together, and so that's a really good example of us looking at what the universe was giving to us and being like, I accept this. Thank you, Andre 3000, for this flutes playing.
Right, bro.
We'll find a way to fit it in, but this is very exciting, and it's a lot of. It's collaborating with the universe and just being grateful for what actually is emerging and what is washing up on your shore, And then we just do the fun and difficult task of just figuring out where it all fits in and making sure the whole thing still is cohesive somehow.
It reminds me, the very first actual hire, like the first actual reach out to an agent that I called, was to Sunlux's managers and agents. Like, we got to reach out to Sunlux because it was like, the three of them are the multiverse that we're looking for. They're all three from different backgrounds. They all three bring different talents. One's more percussive, one is more vocal, one is more instrumental. And that was like such an early one. We have to get them first. The thing that I really want to say, that all these Oscars and things are cool, but the coolest thing is that David Byrne, Mitski, and Sunlux get to perform live at the Oscars, and that's worth all of this Oscar insanity just to watch them perform live. That's going to be so cool.